All right, so we're here with the annual show Pep Talk here, and I'm Andrew Pepping, and I've got my first ever podcast. I've got Dean Steyer. How are you doing today?
We're doing well. Thanks for having me, AP.
Yeah, for sure. What we're gonna talk about, we've got some NFL topics we're gonna talk about and some NBA, but we're gonna talk about the big news in the NFL. Alex Smith going to the Redskins for I believe it was the third overall pick in this year's draft. What kind of thoughts do you have with that trade?
Well, that's a huge blockbuster trade. I didn't know if the Redskins were going to pursue Kirk Cousins and give him another franchise tag or a long term deal. But yeah, I mean, as a Vikings fan, it's kind of exciting having Kirk Cousins on the market now.
Yeah, I think that obviously with that trade, it kind of shows what the future is going to be out there in Washington now. Kirk Cousins is obviously not going to be their quarterback. You mentioned the Vikings being one of their top teams he can go to. I was thinking also like the Browns, even he's mentioned the Broncos. If you had to pick between those three teams, do you think that which team do you think is going to be the most likely he'll go to?
I think it's going to be the Broncos because Case Keenum played really well in the playoffs, and I have a hard time believing that the Vikings are going to move past Case Keenum, along with their other two quarterbacks. I mean, Sam Bradford's an amazing talent, just can't stay healthy, and they've invested a lot in Bridgewater too. So I feel like they're going to give at least one of those guys a shot. And then Kirk Cousins, I mean, he can go to the Broncos. They have a great defense, and then I think they can build a little bit on offense to surround him. He's a good talent. He had some weapons in Washington, but I think Denver's definitely a great fit for him.
Yeah, I think Denver, he definitely has the offense kind of there for him. So he's got Demarius Thomas, C.J. Anderson, and Emmanuel Sanders, and that can make them, I believe, a playoff team having that kind of caliber of a quarterback. Um, I think another team that might get overlooked maybe is the Giants because the Giants I think are gonna make separate ways with Eli this season. Even though Pat Schumacher is there, they're gonna definitely look for a little bit more of talent. I think he has a good fit there with Odell Beckham and Brandon Marshall. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean the Giants on offense are very talented. That wide receiving core, I think any quarterback would be lucky to have. And Eli, I feel like he's past his prime. He's getting a little up there in age. There's only a few guys that can play at that elite level, such as Tom Brady and Peyton Manning when he's a little bit older. I don't think Eli has that same caliber of talent. So Kirk Cousins would be a great fit to the Giants and Pat Schumer. Like I said, being a Vikings fan, that guy is very talented at what he does. I think he'll definitely get in there and change that offense for the better.
Yeah, for sure. And then let's move on with the NFL. We got the draft coming up. We've got, I believe, one of the more talented quarterbacks class this year. We've got guys like Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen. Um, who do you expect to go number one?
And that's a good question. You have Mel Kiper having the kid out of Wyoming going number one. I personally believe the Browns should go with Sam Darnold number one. I think he's a big body quarterback, has a strong arm. And I think he fits well with the Browns organization. I feel like he's more of a blue collar guy compared to Rosen and Allen. So I think they should go either that Darnold route or maybe I would be fine with them going with Allen. I just don't see Rosen as a good fit in Cleveland, even though he might have the most talented arm out of the three.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Cleveland they do have, I believe it's two of the first like 4 or 5 picks this year.
Yep.
So I think they can weigh their options on where they want to go with quarterback. If they want to get one earlier, if they want to hold back. I think that also I can see a team getting a quarterback. I think the Jets are another possible team that I think can end up getting a quarterback as well. Names that really came to mind was Baker Mayfield being one of their top guys. He's probably going to be there. I'm going to assume. I think it's going to be Darnold and I think Rosen are going to go, and then Shaquan Barkley is probably going to end up going there as well. I think he actually fits well under the Colts system of any team. They are in dire need of a running back. Frank Gore is past his prime, and he can't do the whole work there with being 31 or 32 years old. It's just not going to work. But yeah, we even have some SDSU guys here. being named in this year's draft, Dallas Goddard and Jake Weineke. What teams do you think fit them the best? And where do you think they're gonna end up being drafted? I think right now Dallas Goddard's late first, more likely an early second round of anyone. But what are your thoughts on this guy, Dean?
On Dallas Goddard, I mean, he's a special talent coming out of South Dakota State. A lot of people compare him to Gronk, call him mini Gronk. I think as early as he could go would probably be the Falcons at 26. I'm saying that's on the probably the earliest, the high end that he could go. But I do see him as maybe an early second rounder. I don't know if teams are going to pull a trigger on a FCS tight end in the first round, but Falcons would be a great fit. Matt Ryan's is a great talent. I don't know if he's an elite talent now that they've lost Shanahan, but I think under the second year with their offensive coordinator, Dallas Goddard could really thrive in that system. And then moving down a little bit, I mean, I would like to see him maybe go to a team with some needs. Jacksonville does have a decent tight end, but that offense is young and I think is still improving. It would be another solid fit for him. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a team. I think he's gonna go with a team that has a good offense, and not be their main target. So I think a team like the Falcons. I can see him going to the Saints even too. Um, those are the two teams that pop in my mind. And then when it comes to Jake Weineke, I think with a team like the team that's gonna need him, honestly, I can see him going to a team like Detroit, those or the Giants even, a team that's got a really good wide receiver core. Those are names that come to mind, but I think for him, I think the Vikings would be his favorite place to go to, being from Minnesota. But I just don't know if that's going to end up happening.
No, I can't see him really going to the Vikings. We don't really need a wide receiver at this moment. We have a strong wide receiving core here, or I should say in Minnesota. But I can see him. I compare him to a less athletic version of Mike Evans. I think he has a big body, good hands. I think he's a better route runner than Mike Evans was when he came out. But I can see like a high end being a Mike Evans type where he is a red zone threat, runs good routes. He's a big body. So I just hope he goes to a team that gives him a shot. I mean, being from a smaller school, sometimes you don't get the looks that you deserve. So I think a big step for him is getting that invite to the NFL Combine and then really showing out at the NFL Combine and showing these teams that he is an elite wide receiver.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm gonna assume he's gonna get drafted. He's probably gonna be like a fourth, fifth, or even sixth round kind of guy. Um, but moving on from the draft, we're gonna go into the free agent market. A lot of names we mentioned. Kirk Cousins. We basically have the entire Vikings quarterbacks, 1 through 3 on there. Who do you think is the biggest free agent out there? Obviously Kirk Cousins, but Le'Veon Bell comes to mind. Jimmy Graham. Where do you see these guys ending up?
I think the biggest free agent, even though I don't think it's realistic that he's going to move, is Drew Brees. If a team like Minnesota can land a Drew Brees, you have everything in place except for that quarterback. I think a Drew Brees type of a talent you can plug pretty much anywhere, and he's going to excel. I don't see him leaving New Orleans, though. I feel like he's going to stay put there. Same with Le'Veon Bell, huge talent, but I have a hard time believing he's going to leave Pittsburgh, and he's kind of established there as their go-to guy along with Antonio Brown. So besides that, I think the biggest names to look at are now, yeah, like you said, Kirk Cousins, Sam Bradford, a Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum. Since quarterback is the most important position in football, those are going to be your top guys to look at. And honestly, it's tough to know where they're going to go. I think you have a good analysis on Kirk Cousins. I think the Broncos is a great fit for him.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, Le'Veon Bell had mentioned even retiring if he gets franchise tagged again. I don't think that's gonna be the case this year. Some other names that kind of come to mind. We have Jimmy Graham from Seattle, the tight end there. We ended up seeing a guy like where was it? We have a guy like where did he go? I just saw the name. Nagata, a good D tackle from Detroit. We had Terrell Pryor. He kind of had an off year this year. Being in Washington, he really didn't settle in very well. T.J. Ward, good safety that was with the Broncos and ended up getting released. Then now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, I think overall there's going to be a lot of people that get moved and a lot of people that are going to be traded in this NFL offseason. I think it's going to be one of the best off seasons this year. So
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. There's a lot of aging stars, even like a Eric Decker, who's got his big money with the Jets, and got moved to Tennessee. I can see him going to a team that's established as one of the best in the leagues, and then just contributing. He's not going to be a superstar, but filling in that third wide receiver role pretty well. I think Eric Decker is another name to look at, and like you said, the list goes on and on. There's so many talented older players that are coming up for free agency that I think can go to teams and really impact their season.
yeah, I think so too. A lot of these, even going down the list, even going down to like almost the bare minimum contracts, there's still some names that come to mind. But a lot of these guys are old and aging. Like Carlos Hyde, I mean, he's another big name. He didn't even make $1 million this year, so another guy I think is going to be highly targeted too.
Yeah, I think this is the year that Carlos Hyde really gets a contract. I wish San Francisco would have given him the ball a little bit more, especially since he was on my fantasy team. But he is a good talent. I hope he gets paid this offseason. He's still, I think this is the time where he gets his big contract before he gets too old. I'm guessing he's around that 24, 25 age, which is prime for those running backs. And then, yeah, he might turn into a Frank Gore in the future. I think that's a good comparison going forward.
Yeah, I'm thinking that with the whole San Francisco offense there, the money's going to go to Jimmy Garoppolo, and then the rest will probably end up going to Carlos Hyde just because Jimmy Garoppolo did wonders for them when he started for him, and they won that trade, I think, even with those 6 games that he played. So let's move on to our next topic with the NBA. Let's talk about the trade that actually happened on Monday, and then we'll go into the trade deadline. That was Blake Griffin getting traded to the Detroit Pistons for Avery Bradley and Tobias Harris and Boban Bogdanovic. I think it's how you pronounce it. Then they got a first round pick for him as well. This is the biggest trade in a while that I think that's happened in the NBA. Blake Griffin is definitely all-star caliber talent. Now he gets moved to Detroit where he's on a team with Andre Drummond. Um, I'm gonna say this: congratulations for the Pistons, but I think in the long run, the Clippers actually won that. I think they won that trade. Overall.
Yeah, it's tough to say in the short term. Getting a talent, and a superstar like Blake Griffin, he's gonna put people in the seats. So I think that's gonna be nice for the Pistons. But man, that's a lot of money locked up. It's him and Andre Drummond are almost about 70 million combined going forward, which is a lot of money to take on in the salary cap. So yeah, I agree with you. Long run, I think the Clippers. They're one of those teams that were competing for a playoff spot, a good team, but you know that they're not going to beat a super talent like the Golden State Warriors or the Houston Rockets. So maybe it's time to rebuild. They kind of cleared house with getting rid of Chris Paul, now Blake Griffin, and I think DeAndre Jordan is next.
Yeah, and then other guys that went with the trade was Bryce Johnson out of North Carolina and Willie Reed. I believe he was their backup center. So I think the Clippers. I think I was a little shocked by the trade, but at the same time not, because when I looked at where they were in the standings, they were only a game out of the playoffs. They were still a game above 500. So I kind of was a little shocked that they decided, rebuild so early when they still had playoff potential. I think that playoff potential is starting to dwindle away now after the trade of Blake Griffin. And now going on to our next subject, the trade deadline, his ex partner in crime, DeAndre Jordan's been getting shopped a lot. A lot of teams are interested in him. Guys like teams like the Cavs have been extremely interested in him. Where do you see him ending up this not off season, but during this trade deadline?
Man, he's going to be shopped around. I'm hoping he goes to the Cavs just to kind of reboot, give the Cavs a little bit of energy because they've been struggling, and I really want the East to be competitive. When you have LeBron on your team, it's always going to be competitive and tough to beat the Cavs, but something about this year just seems a little bit different. So I'm hoping that he goes to the Cavs. I think that would be a good fit with the Cavs. And then other teams, I don't know. It's hard to say with DeAndre Jordan because he has a set of skills, that are intriguing. But in today's basketball age, he's not great with the jump shot. Obviously, can't shoot 3-pointers, struggles at the line. Yeah, so I have a hard time seeing people paying big money for DeAndre, but he does definitely fill a need for teams. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Cleveland is. I think his probable destination, but a team that I like to see him go to is the Milwaukee Bucks. Um, they obviously need help. I think they're gonna get Jabari Parker back on Friday, so that's a plus for them after tearing his ACL twice in the same. I think it was the same knee. They need someone down low. I don't think John Henson is the answer. He's a little bit too short. You got to get a rim protector. DeAndre Jordan fits that team very well. It makes them a lot more lengthy. You got already Giannis Antetokounmpo, the 6'10" star point guard, and that's gonna be the my favorite spot for him. Otherwise, a lot of other teams don't really come to mind. I mean, I've been seeing teams like Dallas, but it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for him to move to Dallas with a team that's kind of, I think, found their future in Dennis Smith Jr. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for me and him to end up on a team that's already rebuilding. He wants to go to a team that already has playoff potential. But kind of looking through in that same team, Lou Williams, I think, is another guy that's going to get heavily shopped too. I mean, this guy's putting up All Star like numbers. Almost, I think, got snubbed out of the All
Definitely
Star
got
game.
snubbed. Yep.
Teams that are interested, obviously Cleveland, but even our boys from Minnesota have a looks like a chance of getting him. Just looking through, um, where do you think he'll end up? There's the Pelicans have been named, and obviously even pairing him with DeAndre in Cleveland. But which team? Obviously, the Timberwolves are gonna be the top team that you want to see him go over there. But where do you think he's gonna end up?
I don't see him getting moved at the deadline, to be honest. I mean, I think if he's going to get moved, it's going to be because DeAndre gets moved. Either I feel like the Clippers are going to move forward with either both of them or neither of them. Because I don't see them moving forward. DeAndre Jordan only has 2 years left on his contract. Lou Williams is on his last year of his contract. So do you really see these guys signing back with the Clippers with that team that they have around them or lack thereof? So I feel like either the Clippers are going to try to build around those two guys and invest in those two guys or get rid of both of them. So, yeah, you said the Cleveland Cavaliers were in the running. I feel like they would have to give up a lot if you're going to include Lou Williams in that trade. I feel like you're going to have to give up picks that they don't want to give up, along with I'd be fine giving up Tristan Thompson if I were the Cavs. It looks like Iman Shumpert's also on the trading block within that type of a trade. But, yeah, personally, I don't see Lou Williams moving at the deadline.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. I think they honestly will keep him, but the fact that he could go to Minnesota for just here's a predicted trade: Shabazz Muhammad, Aaron Brooks, and Marcus Georges Hunt. You know, that is very appealing for Timberwolves fans, and the Timberwolves do need bench help. It's always been a struggle for them, and 3-point shooting. This guy can bring both. And this would, I think, push the Timberwolves to, hopefully keep that top seed in the Northwest Division.
Well, yeah, imagine the Timberwolves having two of arguably the best six men in the league with him and Jamal Crawford on the same team. Our bench would definitely see an upgrade with Lou Williams joining it.
Yeah, and it's not like they're getting anything like awful back. Like Shabazz Muhammad and is still, I think, a decent scorer off the bench. He just doesn't fit well with the Timberwolves, obviously, this year. He just hasn't been able to get the playing time. Aaron Brooks is still a serviceable backup point guard. Marcus Georges Hunt is still, I think, a decent guy that you can, you know, play for how young he is. You might not know what you're going to get from him, but, I mean, he's been playing well when he's getting minutes with the Timberwolves, so you can't not say that he is a scrub, I think, at this point. But if we keep moving on with, actually, there's one other guy I want to talk about with the trade deadline. He's been rumored quite a bit. He's not on the list right now, but it's Kemba Walker being possibly moved. I think he's on the ending deal on his contract in Charlotte, a team that hasn't had the most success, a team that's been struggling a lot this year, even with the acquisition of Dwight Howard, having guys like MKG, Michael Kidd Gilchrist, Nicholas Batum is even on the team. Um, it's a team that's struggling. It's a team that I think needs to find a new, I guess, face of the franchise for that team. Teams that came to mind were, I think, the Spurs were the biggest team that I can see him going to. Um, where do you think he's gonna stay in Charlotte? I know he wants to stay in Charlotte, but I think if he went to the Spurs, that'd be awesome as a basketball fan.
Yeah, if he goes to the Spurs, they're just adding onto their depth, and you got Coach Pop there, who is one of the geniuses in the NBA. But another team that also could be in the running could be the Indiana Pacers. I know. Are they kind of sitting on the edge of making the playoffs with Kemba Walker? I think they could really make a push for that, and I think they have the pieces that they could trade as well. Excuse me. So I mean, I would personally, like you said, rather see him with the Spurs. Imagine him with Kawhi Leonard. That would be definitely fun to watch. Kawhi Leonard is one of the underrated players in the league, one of the best two-way players. So I definitely want to see him there, but I think Indiana is also in the running.
Yeah, Indiana, a team that we all thought were gonna be on the bottom of this year's standings list, and probably swapping places with Charlotte. Charlotte's right now 5 games out, and Indiana sits at the 7th seed. With a emerging star that we've been waiting for so long as basketball fans, and Victor Oladipo, who probably the most deserving All-Star this year, and probably the most improved player of the year so far this year as well, is going to get another piece like Kemba Walker, a good scorer. Has a really good mid-range shot, can drive the ball. Decent defender, nothing to write home about, but it definitely helps there in Indiana. That could push them up maybe a spot or two in this division. And I think the East is starting to get a little bit more competitive now. If you keep adding more teams that have young talent, and a team that already has I guess you can call him a prime point guard, it's going to definitely help their team. If we Let's move on now. I think all the people that at the trade deadline have been pretty much talked about. Let's talk about the Cleveland. I call it drama right now. There's so many issues going on with Cleveland. People just not understanding their role. Their role, excuse me. IT's been very frustrated. LeBron's been frustrated. People are saying that Kevin Love has been, faking his illnesses and his sickness, not really giving a whole lot of effort there. I mean, Cleveland's kind of it's just not a place you want to be right now. Where do you think that they're going to be able to figure out what's the missing piece of all this drama? Because now Kevin Love's off for 6 to 8 weeks with a hand injury. So
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, every season I feel like in this January, early February, we always talk about, oh, what's wrong with the Cavs? What's wrong with LeBron's team? The chemistry is lacking. But LeBron, being the best player in the NBA, always seems to figure it out once the playoffs roll around. But like I said earlier, I feel like this year might be different. I don't know if they have the pieces. Kyrie Irving is one of those rare special talents that LeBron had as a sidekick that could really step up if LeBron was struggling. And I don't see IT or Isaiah Thomas as that guy. Kevin Love obviously has not been that guy either. So I think they have to try to make a move, though. You got to try. If you got LeBron on your team, got to make a run in the East. You never know. You get to the finals. If you have to face Golden State again, you know them at least. So hopefully they do try to make a move. I think if they stick with the current team they have, though, it's not going to get figured out, and it's going to be a struggle to get out of the East with those talented teams like you talked about coming up, those younger teams. So hopefully they do make a move. What do you think?
yeah, I think it's tough. I think honestly, Kevin Love was another target in the trade deadline that I was going to talk about, but now he's hurt, so now he's officially off the trade market. I think he was one of their issues. I think that you have too many offensive weapons on this team that you don't know really what's going on. It kind of reminds me of OKC. They weren't able to figure out what they were doing right away. I think they've started to gel a little bit more as of late. And they're only half game out from the Timberwolves in the Northwest Division. I think overall they're just gonna need to, I think it's a wave that we have seen in the past, but this wave seems like it's been a lot longer than most waves. Um, but if it keeps going this way, I think they'll still make the playoffs. But it's definitely not going to be a good sign in the long run, because I think LeBron might be out of Cleveland if they can't, find their groove or even make it to the finals this year. So
Yeah, and that's tough with Cleveland's head office guys, their front office guys. Do you go out and make a move? Do you trade that first round pick that's projected to be what a lottery pick, top 10 pick? Do you really trade that pick and go get a piece to try to win this year when you don't even know if LeBron's going to be back? Because if LeBron's gone, they're not really set up for the future. You almost need that pick to draft one of those top high end guys in the draft because frankly, I don't see the Cavaliers as a winning organization without LeBron. So it's tough for that front office. Do you make a move or do you not make a move? And I think that's going to dictate going forward whether LeBron stays or goes.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue I think right now for the Cavs. But I think they'll still make the playoffs in the long run. It's just that how deep will they end up going? We just really won't know until they find their team chemistry. But let's move on to our favorite team, the Timberwolves. Now they're sitting at 32 and 22, first in the Northwest Division. They've been playing good basketball this season, but with lately they've lost. I believe it's like five out of their last. I think it's like four out of the last five. It's been a struggle for them. They beat Brooklyn, which I mean you really can't do a whole lot about it, but they lost to the Hawks. A team that should be the worst team in the whole NBA. Do you think that the Wolves are needing to find a little bit of groove here too, or do you think we're just kind of worrying a little bit too much on what's happening?
Yeah, we might be worrying a little bit too much. They're going through a little bit of a rough patch, but if we look back even a couple weeks ago, they were on a roll. So I am not too worried about the Timberwolves. I think they're going to figure it out. I like the fact that they got some older veteran leadership on the team now because I feel like in previous years you have one of these stretches where you're not winning as much as you'd like and the team gets down, but you have guys in the locker room like Jamal Crawford and Jimmy Butler and Jeff Teague that have really helped with that culture change along with Tibbs. And I do think that Karl Anthony Towns is a great young leader as well. So I wouldn't be too worried. If we look, they've lost to some good teams on the road. So I wouldn't worry too much. I mean, you lose to the Warriors by 13. They hit like 25 threes in that game. You lose at the Raptors by 5. That's a good competitive team. So I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. If we look in 2 weeks and they're still struggling, I think that's when there's some cause for concern.
Yeah, I mean their schedule's pretty favorable before the All Star break or even to the end of February. You got tomorrow they end up playing the Milwaukee Bucks. I think they could win that game. New Orleans Pelicans with the injury to Boogie Cousins, that's going to give them a step back. I think that could take them out of playoff contention. If the Cavs keep struggling, I mean, they could end up winning that game too. They play them on Wednesday. Then you got the Bucks, not the Bucks, excuse me, the Bulls, Sacramento, um, Rockets. We play the Rockets twice, but then we end up playing the Lakers, Chicago again, Sacramento. So all those games, there's probably two games that you're probably going to lose, maybe three, and those are probably Cleveland and Houston's. But otherwise, the schedule seems pretty favorable for the Timberwolves going out of February.
Yeah, very favorable. I mean, yeah, it's going to be tough to go into the Q in Cleveland and win that game. Along with we have a date with Houston in Houston Friday, February 23rd. It looks like so. Those are the two games I'm worried about. I feel like the Timberwolves are going to win that February 13th game against Houston at home. I think they're going to get up for that game and play well for that game. So, yeah, there's only, I would say, 2 to 3 losses, like you said, going into March, which would set up well. If we have a strong February, only losing 2 to 3 games, you can't complain, especially being a Minnesota Timberwolves fan with some of the lack of success that we've had in the past.
Yeah, and honestly, just even looking at the schedule moving on, there's only sorry about that. A couple teams that really come to mind. Then we play the Rockets again. We play Golden State only one more time. And then we got a lot of teams in the mix. Like got a lot of teams like Denver who's struggling. Memphis. We play Dallas one more time. The Clippers. The Knicks. Like this schedule, I think is pretty favorable for them going out. A lot of these games are at home. That are with the better teams. So I think overall the Timberwolves have a good looking schedule just going out of the season. So I expect them hopefully to keep that one seed. And they do have the tiebreaker with OKC beating them in their season series, so which is a plus on that side. But we have two more topics, then we'll probably head out of here. We got the standings right now. If we look at the standings, we've mentioned it a couple times on the show of who's leading. Obviously, Golden State's going to be leading in the West with the one seed. Then we got Rockets, San Antonio, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Trailblazers, the Pelicans, the Nuggets. Then behind them is the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Jazz. I think right now with the Western Conference, I'm seeing all the teams that I want in the playoffs. I just don't know where these teams are going to end up being at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think you got that solid base, especially with the top five. Getting into 6 and 7, there's obviously some superstars on those teams, and Damian Lillard. You got C.J. McCollum. You got those guys down in New Orleans. Those big guys that are fun to watch as well. But I think what we really want to focus on is those top 5 teams: the Thunder, T-Wolves, Spurs, Rockets, Warriors. It's going to be a fun playoff watching those teams battle it out. I'm hoping as a Timberwolves fan that we can somehow sneak into that third spot. So our second round game wouldn't it be against Golden State? I know the Rockets are still a tough team, but I think that the Timberwolves match up better against the Houston Rockets. I think most teams match up better against the Houston Rockets compared to the Golden State Warriors, and it would be nice playing the Trailblazers in that first round game rather than OKC. I think that would be a tough series, but that would probably be the spotlight series of the first round if it ended up being the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I think for right now, Timberwolves. I think best bet they get the 3 seed. I think the 2 seed's a bit of a stretch unless the Rockets end up going on some terrible like losing streak or James Harden or someone on the team gets hurt. I'm not gonna say that it's not possible, but I'm just saying it's probably not gonna happen. I should say it's probably not gonna be impossible. I just don't think it's gonna happen. But I think honestly, just looking at the rest of the team, like I think the Pelicans are gonna take a step back, losing Boogie Cousins. I don't really think there's a whole lot there outside looking in that really has a chance of getting that spot. Maybe the Clippers. Like there's just nothing there for me to see.
No, I mean, when you move your centerpiece there with the Clippers, you're moving Blake Griffin, and you're that close to making the playoffs. I think that's just a sign going forward that the Clippers aren't that confident in their squad. If you're just on the outside looking in there, what are they, a half game out?
Yep.
Yeah, you can't be trading your superstar if you're wanting to make the playoffs. But if long term, that's not the solution. You're tied up big money with Blake Griffin. It makes sense to move him. So I would say the Utah Jazz or the Lakers even. The Lakers would be a fun team to watch, but they're 6 games out. I don't think they're going to make it in the playoffs. And honestly, whoever faces Golden State in that 8th spot is going to struggle. It's probably going to be a sweep.
Honestly, I didn't realize this, but another good destination for DeAndre Jordan would be the Lakers. Switching teams, a lot of young talent that has a lot of potential with Brandon Ingram playing well. The emergence of unexpected Kyle Kuzma. Lonzo Ball has been playing the best, but I think he'll figure it out. Let's move to the East here. The East is I think, a little bit different than I expected. Boston was definitely not going to be the number 1 seed for me going into the season. After I had them at number 2. Then we have Toronto, Cleveland, Miami, the Wizards, the Bucks, the Pacers, the 76ers. And we have a couple teams looking looking out, or out looking in. Excuse me. We have the Pistons, the Knicks, the Hornets. I mean, you can even put the Bulls in there. They're 7.5 games out, but I mean, I think the biggest surprise for me, I have 2 teams in there. It's going to be first, obviously, the Celtics, just because of the injury of Gordon Hayward being out there. But he might, like, just looking at Twitter, he's been shooting the ball now without a cast, so there's a slight chance that he could be back for playoffs. And if he is, that could be extremely scary because I think that could put the Celtics in the finals.
Yeah, that's you wouldn't have imagined that the Boston Celtics losing Gordon Hayward, their second best player on their team, right away that first game of the season. It was sad to see, but I mean they've played well. Toronto's only a game back, but I don't see Toronto overtaking the Celtics for that number 1 seed. Honestly, the Cavs are sitting fine at 3. I think as long as they don't have to play the Celtics until the Eastern Conference Finals, I wouldn't be too worried with them. Another team, like you said earlier, the Pacers have been kind of fun to watch. They've kind of emerged. Victor Oladipo's finally getting his opportunity to shine. He's actually getting the ball enough where he can definitely make plays. He was fun to watch in college when he was at Indiana. One of those grinder guys, just a talented guy that works really hard. So they've been fun to watch. And then I think getting the Philadelphia 76ers into the playoffs. Currently, they're sitting 8-2 games ahead of the Detroit Pistons. I think that would be fun to watch them against the Celtics. I don't think they'll compete much against the Celtics, but Joel Embiid is a talent, and he's definitely entertaining to watch on and off the court.
Yeah, 76ers are a team that I thought were going to be the 8 seed this year, and so far I've been correct. But a team that I'm really surprised about is the Miami Heat. This team, like, we didn't think this team was going to be a 4 seed. This team not making the playoffs, I don't think at all. Um, Guys like Gordon, Dragic, Hassan Whiteside, James Johnson, this team's been playing well. I don't really know how they're doing it because it's honestly just a bunch of like mediocre talent, but they're playing really well. Um, but right now, like they don't have a guy that's averaging more than 20 points, but they're sitting fourth in the East. Kind of shows the lack of talent in the East, though. I think too. So
Yeah, it definitely shows a lack of talent in the East. They must be playing well as a team. I haven't followed the Miami Heat since the LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh days, and I feel like they've struggled since then. So it is good to see that they're getting back on their feet. Dragic he's a fun player to watch. I don't think he's a superstar by any means, but he's definitely a good team player. They still have Hassan Whiteside, who's a good talent, but again, he's more of that old school down low guy. I don't think he's that talented, kind of outside of the paint. So I don't see them sustaining the success going into the playoffs, especially right now. They'd be slotted against the Wizards. I think the Wizards are more talented. I don't think they've showed up as much as they probably should have or could have in recent years. So hopefully John Wall and those guys can take the next step. And I think playing the Miami Heat the first round would definitely help with that.
yeah, I think so too. I think the team that I'm gonna obviously say to look out for now is the Pistons because the Pistons are outside looking in, 2 games out of the 8 seed. So the 76ers need to get the ball rolling here, getting some wins. I mean, this probably might be one of the best front courts in the East. Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond, excuse me, now at the helm, and you have Reggie Jackson there too. Like this team's gonna be, I think, pretty good. And now you're gonna have a guy like, I think the only downfall is you're gonna have a guy like Luke Kennard. I think is their backup shooting guard. That's probably gonna end up starting. But otherwise, I don't see really flaws with this overall trade.
Yeah, I think it's going to take a while for them to build some chemistry, but I think Blake is a good person. He's good. I don't know if he's a great locker room guy, but he seems to have a positive attitude. So hopefully he can head into Detroit. I know that's a tough shift heading from LA to Detroit. Yeah, that's tough, especially if you're an LA guy. But yeah, I'm interested to see what they can do. It's going to be tough to, yeah, like you said, to stop those two beasts down low. So yeah, watch out, Philly. I think Detroit could be coming for you.
Yeah, yeah. And excuse me, it's not gonna be Luke Kennard that's starting. It's gonna be Langston Galloway. They'll probably get the good the thumbs up to be the starter. Last topic we'll talk about here, and then we'll probably get out of here. Is our MVP candidates. Who we think is going to be an MVP, the MVP at the end of the year. Right now, I think all eyes are probably on James Harden. But if you asked me a couple weeks ago, I would have said it would be Kyrie Irving. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to go against James Harden. I mean, he's playing so well, and he's just continued to play well. Their team's very successful. Yeah, it was at the beginning of the season. It was hard to know how him and Chris Paul would gel, but man, they're playing well together. And the other night he had 61 points with a triple double. I mean, that's incredible. Right now he's averaging 31 and 9 assists. That's outrageous. I mean, especially with Chris Paul on the team, you're still averaging 9 assists. So he's definitely a front runner. I think KD, people are overlooking him just because he has so much talent around him. You got the number one team in the league. He's averaging 26, 7, and 5. I mean, you can't beat that from his position. Russell's always in consideration because he flirts with that triple double, but I don't think the triple double is as much of a novelty as it used to be, especially with the way some of these other guys are playing. You have the ball so much in your hands that those stats are generally going to come. If LeBron was playing better, if the team was playing better, I would say he's definitely in contention. He's at 27, 8.5, and 8 rebounds. I mean, just an amazing stat line, but the Cavs are just struggling too much for him to get into consideration. And people get bored with constant success. I mean, LeBron's been there, done that for 15 years plus in the league. So I would say, I mean, I'm a LeBron guy, so I want him up there in consideration, but I don't see him ever winning an MVP again because people don't like that long range consistency.
Yeah, I think another couple guys that I'm going to mention here that are kind of long shots, but Giannis Antetokounmpo, if they can figure things out there, he's a second leading guy in the NBA with 28 points a game. Um, Porzingis has made names, made lists as well. Even DeMar DeRozan, very underrated. I believe one of the most underrated scorers in the NBA, just because of the technique that he uses to score. Excuse me, a lot of mid-range jump shots, not much of a three-point scorer. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up the show here. But before we head out, who are we having in the Super Bowl?
I can't go against the GOAT, Tom Brady. I'm predicting a Pats victory 27-23, and Tom Brady wins the MVP once again.
I think it's actually gonna be a lot closer than people think. I'm gonna say it's 24-28 Patriots, but I'm expecting it to be a nail biter to the end. But that's gonna wrap it up here for the first ever show of the Pep Talk with Andrew Pepping. Thank you, Dean, for joining on the first show. Hopefully we have you here again. Try and get these done a little bit more often, but hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you guys next time.